On the theme Gender Equality and Women's Participation in STEM in Central and West Africa. Bonjour et bienvenue au webinaire sur le...
Hello and thank you. Welcome to today's webinar on the theme Gender Equality and Women's Participation STEM in Central and West Africa. I am Lancelot AOD and I'm the Communication and Media Relations Advisor for IDRC, the International Development Research Center at the Regional Bureau for Central Africa and Western Africa in Dakar in Senegal. Before starting, allow me to give you some indications on the platform that we're using today so that you don't miss anything at all in the presentation on the panel so that you can interact with our participants. First, interpretation. Simultaneous interpretation will be there all through the webinar, and you've already have chosen between French and English, your language choice. And you notice you can modify that choice at any time on clicking on the button that looks like a little gear on top right, and choose the language of your choice in the preferences section. Secondly, there will be a question and answer period that will allow you to interact with the panelists and presenters, and at any time you can, right now and later on too, you can submit your questions on Slido. You click on the Slido icon, that's SLIDO, up top right of the platform, and an application will open in a new window. Then all you have to do is to type your question and provide it to the participants. Notice that you can also interact with the questions asked by other participants by clicking on the button that has the thumbs up to show your approval for a question. And so the question will then be moved ahead. And that means you're really voting for the most popular questions, and that permits the moderator to put them forward. So if you have any technical difficulties, click on the Help button. It's also at the right of your screen. You can submit your problem and you'll have assistance right away by email to solve your problem. So without further ado, I want to give the floor to Julia Crawley, Regional Director of the Office for West and Central Africa. Julie, over to you. Thank you very much, Lancelot. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today for this important discussion. Equality among genders is something that's been a long-standing concern for international development. And there have been many advances, but there are still inequalities. During COVID-19, that amplified the situation and threatens to push back the progress that there has been in Sustainable Development 5 objective that aims to equality among the sexes and make women and girls independent. The inequality in STEM is an ongoing problem and has prevented people from participating fully. We are research that attacks the specific barriers in STEM. There are many projects going on in Central Africa and Western Africa, and that assist the leadership of women in STEM. There are many organizations that are local, regional, international that sustain gender equality in STEM. Today's dilemma is it's an opportunity to exchange on this topic in order to share our observations and best practices and open up the barriers that have been preventing women in STEM. And who knows, maybe we'll be able to identify additional research paths. To lead our exchanges today, we are delighted to have Simon Nyake-Otara, who's a Senior Policy Officer at the International Center for Girls and Women's Education in Africa, best known as CFA. Simone will be accompanied by a group of esteemed presenters and panelists who will be happy to present to you. So without further ado, to you, Simone. Thank you very much, Julie and Lancelot. It was a real pleasure for me to moderate this panel. It's a panel to lead to rich discussions in sharing of experiences, and it's a panel that's made up of honorable women. All the participants are women, and among them, each one will have a particular profile. And these are women who generally work in the fields that we're discussing today. And I would leave their biographies as a surprise. I'll just give the list of those women. But before having all of those panelists, I would like to present to you, just briefly, one woman who will establish the context of today's discussion, and that is Ms. Ornella Chanke. We call her Ornella. She's a young woman scientist. She's a researcher. She has a diploma in hydrology. She works as a research assistant. She's coordinator of projects in the regional bureau of multisectorial for West Africa at Dakar. Today we will have the honor of listening to Ornella. She'll make a presentation for us on the integration of women and girls in STEM in Central Africa and Western Africa. Following her presentation, we will have panelists. Among those, Mrs. Horai Mamadou Anne, Mrs. Ndeye Oumou Kari Sali Diouf, Madame Félicité Djokou, Honorable Dr. Gnadji Nathalie Kabera, Madame Ornella Chanke. So those are the panelists that will be after the presentation by Madame Ornella. So, without further ado, Ornella will do her presentation on the state of integration of women and girls in the STEM in Central Africa and Western Africa. We're looking forward to finding out how young women are managing in these fields in Central and Western Africa. Over to you. Thank you, Simone. My presentation will focus on the participation of women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in Central and West Africa. This presentation has been prepared with my colleague, Madame Lebon Nuela, and I salute her. My presentation is structured as follows. First, an introduction, the research trends, the global status of gender disparities in science, engineering in sub-Saharan Africa, factors affecting girls' learning, and the learning of women in science and engineering and technology, public policies implemented to improve girls' learning, recommendations, and finally, I will finish with a conclusion. Next. According to the UNESCO Science Tour 2030 report, published in 2016, science is an indispensable element in meeting the challenges of sustainable development. Science, both in its field of study and covers several areas with new approaches and solutions that allow us to identify and clarify and so to attack new problems, new world problems. Science has a role to play in measurable results and production, and it constitutes a fundamental method in taking informed decisions and putting into effect studies of impact. Science also, in its fields, includes many areas, understanding natural processes and the impact of human activities. The organization of social systems contributes to questions of health and well-being and demonstrates better strategies which will allow us to reach the first objective of sustainable development, eliminating poverty. In the UNESCO report, further, it was indicated that science plays a key role in education. Science permits us to have critical thinking, which accompanies scientific teaching, and it's essential to train minds to understand the world in which we live and to make choices and solve problems. Scientific knowledge is the basis of problems, eliminating problems of misunderstandings and because of the shared understanding. The scientific knowledge reinforced the improvements in of lower income countries, especially where the advantages of science have not been sufficiently recognized, and where scientific information is often lacking. So, because that's a situation where there's a dependency on more developed countries. Science also has a role to play in reaching equality education. Next. Many strategies, African strategies on education and science are there to sustain economic and social development of the continent. This is proceeding from investments in training and developing educational and technical competencies in science, technology and research, and innovation. These are key areas that reinforce and make use of the human capital of the African continent. In that regard, the continental strategy on science, technology, innovation for AFRIC, the strategy, continental strategy, includes secondary school teaching in science, technology, and innovation, with the possibility of a career ahead. From 2016 to 2025, there's this continental education strategy in order to create new citizens who will be agents of change in an effective manner. In these strategies, the list of 10 fields are listed as key ones, equally among genders, science, technology, and development in the competencies. This strategy focuses on having girls in school is a major challenge to address in the improvement of their results in math and science. The tendencies or trends in research, we can see that the parity between genders among researchers is a difficult goal to reach. As far as parity in research in general, there's the leaky pipe syndrome, as you can see in the graphic. Women who have a degree are 53% masters. Again, and then still there are women, but the higher you go, when you arrive at the doctorate level, there's a drop. That's at 43%. And in research per se, it's fallen to 28%. Here, the overall situation of the disparity between men's and female in engineering in sub-Saharan Africa. Again, based on the UNESCO report of Science Towards 2030, there have been significant gains in sub-Saharan Africa. A little bit less than one researcher out of three is a woman. In many countries of the region, we see a notable increase of women in diplomas in higher education in scientific areas. For example, 54% of 47 diploma holders in science in Lesotho. In Namibia, 60% of 149. In South Africa and Zimbabwe, there are more students who have achieved parity. There's respectively 49% and 47% among degree holders. In Angola, Burundi, Eritrea, Liberia, Madagascar, Mozambique, and Rwanda, we see that women in science are from 35 to 40%, whereas in other companies like Benin, Ethiopia, Uganda, and Swaziland, there's 30% or lower in science. However, in Burkina Faso, women are at a very low level, 8% of degree holders in science. The representation of women in engineering is comparatively high in sub-Saharan Africa compared to other regions. In South Africa and in Mozambique, for example, women represent 28 and 34% respectively of engineers holding a degree. In agronomy, there's 40% or more of women in South Africa, Lesotho, Madagascar, Mozambique, Namibia, Sierra Leone, Swaziland, and Zimbabwe. And in health, this rate is between 26 and 27% for women who are interested in the health field. And in Namibia, it's really very high at 94%. Women in the health field. Here we have the disparity in male-female by field of teaching. Here's an indicative chart from 2016 to 2017 in Senegal, and the evolution of the students from 2016 to 2020. The factors that affect women's learning and the learning of girls in science, engineering, and technology. There are three main sociocultural factors. The determining weight of sociocultural influences less performance on the part of girls compared to the boys in certain environments. Also, the difference between the girls' and boys' performance varies quite a bit in the subgroups of the population and among countries, including perhaps supposedly a genetic disposition that would make the boys better at math than the girls are. Another social-cultural factor has to do with stereotypes of gender and violence based on gender. Traditional concept of the woman's place or role has a role to play. It can influence the decision of a young girl to embrace an area of studies historically considered feminine, and to avoid systems perceived as more masculine and needing skills or knowledge that she would believe herself lacking. Another social cultural factor is early marriage and teenage pregnancy. The early marriage is a factor in abandoning studies. In girls, we see that they drop out generally a bit before or a bit after an early marriage or following a pregnancy. But this interrelationship between pregnancy and dropping out and the marriage of the girls in sub-Saharan Africa, these factors are very complex. So in certain cases, the concern that the girl be exposed to gender violence in this school setting, including sexual harassment, that can lead parents to marry off their daughters early. When it comes to policy, and improving girls' learning, the ratification of measuring instruments, next. The ratification of normative instruments that are international and regional are a type of engagement that allow the exercise of the human rights. That's why there's the ratification of relevant conventions as far as the right to education for young girls. There's the ratification of regional conventions and international on the rights of man, on human rights. Many West African and Central African countries have ratified a number of conventions. For example, the one on elimination of all form of discrimination toward women, 1979. Also, the Convention on the Rights of Handicapped Persons, 2006. And there's also the UNESCO Convention on the Fight of Discrimination of 2016. There's also been the ratification of the Convention on the Rights of Man, or human rights. Some conventions have been ratified. For example, we have the African Charter of Human Rights, 1981. We also have the protocol in the African Charter of the Rights of Man, and the one for the rights of women, the Maputo Protocol of 2003. There's also the African Charter of the Rights and Well-Being of Children from 1970. I must emphasize that all of these international instruments and regional instruments do not specifically address the question of women in STEM, but there are some elements to note: the fight against all kinds of discrimination towards women, the principles of equality between men and women, the promotion of education and training for women at all levels and in all disciplines. We also have the constitutional framework for STEM, the right to education, and gender equality. In a general sense, it is a rare thing that the national constitution would address these particular issues, education in STEM and the equality between the sexes. Also, in the national policy framework related to STEM, the study of policy provides information that is important, considering the modalities and the operationalization of those dispositions established by law and the priorities. Also, the policies can include more detailed information than the national laws. We also have the national approach to resolve the disparity based on gender. And so this has to do with orienting students towards science and working against the disparity in STEM. In some countries of West Africa and Central Africa have specific measures to facilitate access and participation on the part of girls in STEM. So, as far as recommendations, we can offer broad recommendations to promote standards having to do with gender that are more egalitarian. It's important to continue to promote within the school context a more welcoming approach to the women and to break down stereotypes that spread stereotyped views of women, thus limiting women's educational opportunities and career opportunities for girls and women. Omana, can you conclude in less than a minute, if you please? It's very rich what you are saying. Could you wrap up? Well, yes. So I will conclude my presentation on this message from Madame Audrey Azoulay, Director General of UNESCO, from International Women's Day on the 8th of March this year. And she said this: "Today, I invite all the member states of UNESCO to work to the independence of women and girls so that they can show the way by building a more sustainable world together. We can ensure that the voice of women will be heard whether they are whispering, whether they are speaking, or whether they are shouting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We applaud you from wherever we are for that very rich presentation. Congratulations. You have said some very important things that we can't summarize in their entirety right now, but what I hold on to is that there is an institutional and legal framework that exists and that has been adopted by a number of member countries, but unfortunately, many of these frameworks are not actually implemented. And so some countries are advancing in terms of integration of women and girls in STEM, and others are not advancing very rapidly in this regard. So the question is, despite all of these institutional and juridical frameworks, there are certain countries who are falling behind and other countries are advancing. Why is this? You cited a number of conventions and protocols, a number of social and cultural factors that are that have an impact. We're looking forward to hearing from our panelists who will help you to understand what causes a situation where the line is not moving, where things are not advancing. So we have Madame Mamadou Anne, who is the coordinator for FAWE and responsible for the 14 chapters of FAWE in West Africa and Central Africa. You're also a specialist in education, human rights, with a rich experience with a number of different organizations at a continental level and the international level. You've also worked in the private sector. And as an expert in gender equality in education, we would like to ask you the following question, Madame Ourai. The question that I would like to ask you, what we have just heard a report on the state of play in terms of gender equality and women's participation in STEM. However, there's still a great delay in this area. In your opinion, what are the main reasons for this situation in West Africa? Over to you, Madame Ourai, for your answer. Thank you very much, Simon. Hello to everyone. I would like to, first of all, thank the IDRC for the invitation and say that I am very happy to share this panel with my very distinguished co-panelists. So this is a huge question, a vast question. I will try to limit myself to 2 minutes. I would like to put forward the systemic and institutional factors that are at play here and try to understand how this affects younger girls in their day-to-day lives. There are two blockages, two obstacles that are faced by all young learners, boys and girls. And in that, I would say the fear of STEM. This is present in all young learners, and it comes often from the fact that STEM teachers present these subjects, these streams, as being elitist, that are reserved for the most intelligent among us, the most gifted. Then there's the issue of the mastering of language and languages. This is something we realized over the last few years, working a lot with STEM issues at FAWE. Students in science subjects, mastering the language of instruction is so important. If you don't understand the language in which STEM is being taught, the STEM subjects are being taught, you can't advance. And there's a lack of information and orientation and guidance in the area of career possibilities in STEM. I remember a young girl in one of our projects, our science projects, who dreamed of being a pilot, and she had already given up on her dream because she did simply not know that her country had a training in that area. The second form of obstacle is very specific to girls. First of all, something that we've noticed in our research is that the awareness of the role of a girl versus the role of a boy, it becomes very real. It crystallizes itself between 3 and 6 years of age. So we're talking about young childhood. And in that period, young girls hear and internalize messages. The doctor was speaking to us about social norms and stereotypes. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And the example of a study that was carried out in Sierra Leone teaches us a lot about children in second and third grade who already had internalized that boys are smarter than girls, more intelligent than girls, that it's normal that boys should tease girls, etc., etc. And so if these young learners are already scared of science, then it's even more so the case for the young girl who is hearing from a very early age that she is less intelligent than the boy next to her. And so for these same reasons, they are scared in class to ask questions when they don't understand what the teacher has said, because the teachers who are not trained in gender equality pedagogy sometimes unconsciously block the participation of girls in their classrooms. And for those who manage to, despite all of these obstacles, reveal themselves as being very intelligent, and I put this in quotation marks, of course, very intelligent, but the girls who do manage to get into STEM and show themselves to be intelligent enough, they still face obstacles. I remember the surprise that I experienced when I looked at UNESCO's project, Cracking the Code. A young, very brilliant young girl, a Turkish, who was always the best in her class in STEM subjects, but who nonetheless hesitated to embrace a career in this area. So the lack of confidence of young girls, young women who are discouraged from going into these careers and these fields, who are actively discouraged by their families, by their teachers, by their friends, by the entire community. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry to cut you off. Yes, thank you. It was very very interesting to hear you on this issue. And of course, we need to have specific examples like the ones you've given. It helps us to understand the experience of many on the ground. Thank you for your intervention, your answer. I would like to now present our second panelist, who is Madame de Umu Kairi Saldiouf. She is a teacher and trainer, specialist in adult education, has experience as a French teacher, consultant in gender and girls education, monitoring and evaluation, project management, and writing and editing. She is a Knight in the National Order of Merit of Senegal. So, Madame Diouf, the question I would like to ask you, and I would ask you for a brief answer if possible. In your opinion, what are the main barriers to girls' and women's education and participation in STEM in Senegal? Over to you, Madame Diouf, for 2 minutes. Thank you very much, Madame Moderator. I would like to begin by expressing my satisfaction and my a joy in participating in this panel with other brilliant panelists. To begin, I would put before you some statistics. According to UNESCO, 67 of girls in Senegal are studying in STEM classes. 30% are, 67% of students overall are in STEM, and 30% are girls. The ministry has reaffirmed its commitment to offer, recommitted itself to offer quality education in STEM subjects. There have been decisions of the state on promoting STEM that have not been properly vulgarized or properly made to be understood by people at the grassroots. And so, as has been said by one of the other panelists, there is, of course, there are social factors. There's violence against young girls. There is the weight of having to carry out the great majority of domestic tasks. There's the predominance of men and boys in STEM, and this includes teachers. There are a number of other factors that discourage girls from attending STEM. There are sexist prejudices that are present in the popular zeitgeist and that are an obstacle. There's an absence of laboratories and computer labs in many facilities, many schools, and if they exist, they don't take into account the specificities of girls. There are a number of immediate issues. Young girls don't see a lot of women scientists, either at school or in professional milieus. They are not presented with these models in the classroom. This is true in textbooks and manuals, in the curriculum. The models that are presented to them are almost all men. There are very few women scientists or STEM specialists, professionals who are presented to them in the classroom as they grow up. And in terms of promoting the careers that are available to them in STEM, this is a real issue, the link between schooling and the world of work. And so in the school environment, girls are greatly discouraged and don't learn about these streams and these career possibilities. In terms of initiatives that are being implemented, I will wait until my second intervention. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madame Diouf, for your answer. Very clear and very precise. I would like to ask Madame Félicité Djoukou, who is an executive director of the Association des Acteurs de Développement, ADEV, a civil society organization based in Yaoundé in Cameroon. She is a multidisciplinary researcher involved in research on gender equality, sexual and reproductive health. She is a woman who has 10 years of experience in qualitative and quantitative research, a member of the team for strengthening capacity strengthening of research organizations, has been involved with IDRC and contributed to a number of other organizations. The question I wanted to ask you as a sociologist, why are there not enough women in STEM-related jobs in Central Africa, and what can be done to achieve more equality in this field? Very briefly, if possible. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Simone, for allowing me to speak, and bravo to the previous panelists. It's difficult to speak after such brilliant interventions and such a brilliant presentation. I would say that the stereotypes, the sexist stereotypes, the construction of inequalities start very early at the level of education and training and are reproduced also in the world of work. When a young girl does not from the start have open to her the choice of STEM streams, she's not going to be able to find a job in these areas later on. And from my own experience, I would say that very, very young, I learned that math, science, technology was for men, and that all women who braved, who were courageous enough to nonetheless try to pursue these careers were beaten back, were diminished, were marginalized, and access to technical and post-secondary advanced education was limited for them. They their participation was devalued, and so women oriented themselves towards other general streams, not in the STEM disciplines. I wanted to conform to what society expected of me, and a lot of young women feel this way after my studies, and that's how I found myself going into sociology. So when a young woman tries to find positions in the research sector, it's a great challenge. I'm at the University of Yaoundé, and there are only 4 women professors, researchers. I think I will be the 5th or the 6th. I'm not sure whether I will get tenure or whether I will get a position. I have not been able to focus on my doctoral thesis because I have to work on so many other things, the bills, taking care of my family. There's so many pressures on a young woman, and so she has to often abandon her professional aspirations. And if I were to do that, I would not be able to fulfill my dreams professionally. I would not be afforded the credit necessary to continue with my studies. And so that's why I think it's so important to offer scholarships to young women. With a scholarship, I would have been able to focus on my thesis and I would finish my degree. But without that kind of support, without a scholarship or a grant of some kind, I had to find work and scrimp and save to try to find the sums necessary to finish my studies. And what we are doing very proactively, we have a program on gender and STEM for 10 to 18-year-olds. Through that program, very early, we are accompanying young girls and teaching them about the importance to prepare themselves for a career in STEM, what they need to do, how they need to proceed to orient themselves towards that kind of a career. How to finish secondary school in a way that opens those doors to scientific streams. Thank you very much, Félicité. I think we'll have the opportunity to come back to these different recommendations. I would like to now present another panelist who is Dr. Khadija Drabo, who is a doctor of physics with an option in external geophysics and renewable energy design engineer. She's currently working at the Institut de Recherche en Sciences Appliquées et Technologies, IRSAT, of the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique et Technologique as a research and development engineer in the energy department while waiting to be reclassified as a research associate. And if I'm not mistaken, you're from Burkina Faso, Dr. Drabo. The question I have for you is as follows. How were you encouraged to get involved in STEM in such a specific area as well, such a highly technical area? And when did you become interested in geophysics? Did you think you had the same opportunities as men in the field? Over to you, Dr. Drabo. So thank you very much, Simon, for giving me the opportunity to speak. Hello to all of the wonderful, great women who are participating in this panel. I'm very glad to be here today. And without further delay, I will answer the question. So, well, how was I encouraged to get involved in STEM? It wasn't easy. In fact, on the contrary, I was often discouraged to go into STEM. My physics teachers, made it very clear to us that science was very complicated, very difficult, and we shouldn't go into physics. And once I had my secondary diploma and my undergrad degree, my parents said, don't go into science. This is not for women. I should go into medicine, said my father. So against my will, I went into medicine, but I really didn't find myself there. I was still interested in my calculations, my numbers. I wanted to do physical and physics, physical sciences and physics. And so I decided eventually to disobey the wishes of my father and my family, to take the risk. And of course, once you've disobeyed, you really have to succeed. The pressure is on you. And so I worked very hard, worked, and now I am still involved in physics. I chose the energy area, and I've been able to attain my objectives, but I admit that it was not easy. It was a difficult path. I was often discouraged, but with my determination, I was able to move forward and do what I wanted to do. How did I discover geophysics? How did I become interested in this area? Well, there was a geophysicist, Mr. Ouattara, who is now the Minister of Post-Secondary Education, who won the award for best physicist in Africa. And so I was very interested in his work. I went to see one of my professors and said, there's this physicist who really inspires me. I would like to be like him. And that's where he gave me his contact information. I went to speak to him, had a meeting with him. Fortunately, he is not someone who is very fixated on gender stereotypes. He encouraged me, and that's how I was able to work with my director, Dr. Nanema, and the professor until I was able to achieve my objectives. Do I think I have had the same opportunities as men in the field? Well, I think we can achieve great things if we are very determined. I think I have the same opportunities in the sense that I think I have the same intellectual capacity. But of course, as a woman, there are social factors. There's a social life that means we have to work much harder. But when we want to, when we truly want to, we can achieve great things. Thank you very much, Dr. Drabo. Very inspiring to hear your experience. I would like to invite now Dr. Irnyaki Nathalie Pera, who is a researcher at the National Institute of Agricultural Research of Benin, has a master's of research from Camas University in Wildlife Conservation and Applied Ecology. She holds an agronomic engineering degree in natural resources management and a PhD in animal sciences and in communication and innovation systems in agriculture from the University of Wageningen in the Netherlands. She is involved in a number of very important research and policy institutions, some of them supported by the IDRC. Her work is involved in reducing barriers, systemic barriers to the participation of women and underrepresented groups in engineering, education, and careers in Benin and Ghana. So that's a short summary of the academic and professional career of this impressive woman. I would like to ask her the following question. Dr. Nyanki, according to the WECBG project studies, what are the systemic barriers to women's participation in engineering, education, and careers in Benin? Thank you very much. I would like to congratulate all of the other panelists for your brilliant interventions, answers, and I'm wondering, what can I say after everything I've heard that's been so enlightening? I'm a member of the project team, WECBG, working on the involvement of women in the engineering field in Benin. It is a project financed by the IDRC, who I thank for their funding, which allows us to carry out this very important project. So I really thank the IDRC for this contribution. we started this project in 2020, and it is supposed to be completed in 2022, a 3-year project. When we carried out this study, we categorized the various obstacles and barriers from the point of view of the students. We worked directly with students who are in training, in studies towards becoming engineers, in engineering, and we worked with their teachers and professors. According to the students, they feel there's a lack of information, a crucial lack of information around engineering programs and STEM more broadly. That is, when they go into their undergraduate studies, there is very little information offered to them on the various STEM streams. And so often they feel it's too late to make a decision to go into these streams and to choose a STEM discipline. They haven't had the time to reflect on what they want to do. And a second obstacle is that in STEM, the area of engineering in Benin, there are some restrictions around what the Benin government offers to prospective students: math, physics, chemistry, life sciences, biology, and English and French. So if women who were already scared or intimidated by math and science have to be selected according to those criteria, experience in all of those subjects, it becomes a great obstacle. And therefore, they are not oriented towards, they're not recommended by guidance counselors and others to go into these areas, and often the parents don't have the means necessary to attend the schools, whether they be public or private. The STEM schools cost between 500,000 to 800,000 in our currency, and it's a very prohibitive and expensive. There's also this fear. Women seem to have a lack of confidence in themselves. They feel that they're not capable, they're not able, because from a very young age they've been taught that science, math, technology, the STEM fields are not for them. It's for a man, it's for boys. You have to have a lot of strength. But actually the strength is in one's head, not in one's muscles. There are other barriers that we identified in the study. What do teachers think, for example? The teachers said, yes, our subjects that we teach are difficult, but they should not present them as difficult in a discouraging way. And so there are very few models, role models, who are women that they can present to their students. We will have the opportunity. Okay, yes, thank you. Yes, we need to value then these role models. Absolutely. We'll have the opportunity to have another roundtable. You have some more questions coming at you, which we would like to ask you. And so I would like to come back to Madame Ouray and talk about the education of girls. What do you find most challenging when it comes to girls' education and training, and more specifically in STEM fields? In 1 minute and 30 seconds, if possible. Thank you very much. My co-panelists have already done a lot of my work for me. I really find myself identifying with what they've said. There are two major difficulties here. First of all, convincing young girls of their value, their intrinsic value at all levels, and to boost their confidence, their self-esteem. Another difficulty, because we can't forget that education is a subsystem in a much broader system, which is our society. And so this difficulty, this obstacle is to convince communities to raise awareness in communities of the importance of educating girls and young women. Once we've worked on those two, everything else falls into place. It's an issue of technicalities of how to operationalize and implement. And so what we do a lot at the level of FAWE is to empower young people, especially young girls, young women. I talked about the negative impact of society, which discourages many girls and women. I remember that young girl who wanted to absolutely do industrial mechanics and
who was being mocked. But with the work on independence that we've done, she stood up and telling to the girls, "Oh, you won't find a husband." We must really convince the young girls that they have value themselves and to boost their self-confidence. We talked about recognizing scientific women, and that's what we're doing. And we're doing that so that they can speak to young girls about their career paths and learning path and their experience. We have heard a lot of that from the panelists today, and that allows also for the deconstruction of the ambient discourse. One has to have confidence in oneself and permit oneself to move forward. And Simone, if you say also the proper environment for the full development of the young girl in school, in the class. And we also hear from we also think of an academic and a social point of view. There are models that we could talk about on another occasion. Thank you very much, Uri, for that contribution and sharing that experience, especially that of the young girl. I would like to recognize Ms. Diouf from Senegal, from the FAWE. So in your activities in Senegal, how does FAWE mobilize to permit access, professional development, and the promotion of women in higher education, in particular in STEM? The floor is yours. Thank you, Madam Moderator. In Senegal, we're intervening mainly in secondary school teaching, and not so much in higher education, but in secondary general studies. We've improved the participation of girls in science, technology, engineering, and math. So that project involves 150 girls, and we have support courses with those girls for STEM and in the language of instruction, French. And with these girls, we have activities where we promote women in science that are in their immediate environments and that present on their lived experience, like the panelists. There are also activities that permit psychological counselors to contribute. We have one girl who was successful in her stats exam, and she went on from there thanks to this content. The girls develop more confidence in themselves, have greater personal development. So in that project, we were able to bring forward these girls, because in these establishments there have been reorganized science studies. We also created workbooks in math and others that would be suitable to the undergrads. And also the teachers are part of developing a program for the teachers and to do with their training. So that's what we have been developing in Senegal to promote science for the girls. Thank you very much, Mrs. Diouf, to giving us the example from Senegal. I would move on to Dr. Kadia Drabo. As we said, you were the first woman with a doctorate in physics from the University Norbert Zongo. And as such, do you have advice to give to women who are starting their career in STEM? Perhaps there would be something that you would have liked to know when you started, something that could have been given to you as advice when you were starting out. The floor is yours, Dr. Drabo. Thank you, Simone, for that. The first question is, we said you were the first woman with a doctorate in physics at your university. Would you have advice to give to women who are starting their career in STEM? For women who want to start in STEM, I would like to tell them to especially not listen to those in their environment who discourage them. They have to want it, and that it wasn't easy, but if it's really what they want, because we're not saying that every woman has to do science. Those who do love science, they ought not to hesitate, although they would know that it won't be easier. It's just like in other disciplines, one must work. In particular, it's got nothing to do with gender, but I would advise them especially to be determined and to persevere to the point of attaining their objectives that they have set for themselves, but especially to not be discouraged and to carry on. I hope to see many more women with physics doctorates. What would you have liked to know when you were starting in that field? When I started, I was doing science because I liked it. I didn't know what the outlook was, what it would lead to. I would like in the communication that women know that there's a future in STEM for them. It pleased me to know that after having loved physics, if they would have a place in positions that involve data and so forth. I want to ask you a little question. If you were to do it all over again, would you do it? Or would you do it in some different way? Things you would have changed? If I would do it all over again, with no hesitation, what I was going to do, I did pause to see how to integrate into the functional field, and if I had to do it over again, I would do it from the first year of doctorate, if possible, before going into work, because now I have to get accredited again. But if I had done the studies up to a doctorate level, I would be recruited directly for research. We hope that there are young women who are following us who are really listening to your advice. Thank you very much. I'd like to go on to Félicité Djokou. I don't know if she is online. The way that trades are presented, they have a status that's being masculine or feminine. This can have a determining role in the choice of career for young girls. According to your view, what changes must be brought to the scientific system so that it can be more attractive for women scientists and in study and eventually as scientists? Well, first, I would say that the change would have to happen in curriculum and the student in the teachers, because generally these teachers play a very large part in encouraging the young girl when she's still at school. Because it's from that contact that she will come to believe that, oh, this is difficult. Secondly, to give value to women's skills. If we were to use, for example, the aspects that are close to the experience of women, we would realize that we would capture women more broadly. We use things for what young people participate in our program. So for a woman who is very fond of physics or chemistry, will you tell me that what we do in our kitchens is not chemistry? For my part, I believe it is chemistry. So there's a concentration that we have in working in our kitchens. If we transfer that to the labs, then that is relevant. We can use elements like that have some connection to reach women. And women are good at associating things. There's a plant in Cameroon, a dish that is made with some 20 spices. I wonder how our forebears were able to gather the 18 to 20 ingredients in order to have that particular dish. There are competencies that women have, and it would just be important to use elements that are close to them so that they can better assimilate the scientific world, and offering things that are innovative and indeed to bring women to their full potential, because I believe they have a great deal of potential, especially by using elements that are close to them to break down those barriers that are undermining esteem and so forth. Thank you very much, Felicity. Such a practical example, very well presented. Dr. Nyanki, as a researcher, can you say how systemic barriers to the participation of women in STEM can be broken down? And your study, did it allow you to identify opportunities that could encourage the participation of women in STEM? Very briefly, Dr. Nyanki. Thank you very much. Indeed, yes, these barriers can be broken down. And there must be interventions from the beginning, because when we're talking about at university level, it was said that it has to go down earlier, and these have to be accelerated. Go to the basis in elementary school and secondary school to motivate women, explain to them what the STEM is, and then, like long before they arrive at university, we must encourage them through grants, interest these women who are already interested in STEM and support them with grants to ensure their participation in STEM. We also think one has to look again at the curriculum, the training of teachers. that training must be sensitive to people. We put everybody in the same basket, but there are teachers who are particularly sensitive to people. What must be involved with the women, the girls especially, their esteem must be addressed. Also, mentorship and tutoring as well. When the girls are in university, there's nothing. They must be able to be coached. People who are already in second year can coach those who are in first year, and those who are in third year, they can coach the ones who are coming after them. The researchers can also coach all of those women coming along after them on gender, the importance of esteem, and so forth. Because I've noticed we have to keep the flame burning. If it goes out, that can end things. So that flame must be kept burning. So I think today, Africa and the whole world needs STEM, and I think we are in the majority on this continent. And if we encourage the young women and girls in STEM, I think we will be winners.
And if you allow me 30 more seconds, we are doing this already. We've said that only 30% of scientists in Benin are women, but we are valuing them more, promoting them more through the project. We're promoting the work that they're doing. We're presenting all the opportunities that African women can take advantage of in the STEM disciplines. And those areas that are less known, we are showing them, we are raising awareness, and we are also promoting the role models who are already present in these fields. I would like to hand things over now to Madame Ornella from UNESCO, who made the presentation earlier, her brilliant presentation. We would like to know some things from you. You talked about a number of legal instruments that the African Union has put into place to promote the education of women in Africa. You talked about the Maputo Protocol. And so we see that despite all of these different instruments, conventions, protocols, the careers for women and girls in STEM are still not that readily available. So how is UNESCO concretely mobilizing to encourage girls to take an interest in science studies and careers in Africa? Madame Ornella. Yes. In the Africa of 2063 that UNESCO envisages, we would have 2/3 of students being able to pursue post-secondary education and have parity for young women in this area. And we would like a great number of them to go into the STEM disciplines. I refer here to the importance of a successful economy. UNESCO is very much involved with the African Union, promoting the education of STEM disciplines by training teachers and professors, and also by providing support to young girls and women. This initiative of UNESCO will involve a workshop, an upcoming workshop on artificial intelligence and robotics, which aims to strengthen capacity of teachers in the use of 3D printers, with the objective of using those printers to increase the interest in STEM and students who would like to go into STEM. these printers allow you to go from a prototype to a concrete product or object, and we would like to offer better conditions for girls and women to study in STEM streams. These are some of the ways in which UNESCO will encourage learning and education of young women in the STEM areas. I'd like to build on what you've just said. Another question. You as a young scientist, what advice would you give to young girls who are curious about science but are not sure if they can do it? What is some concrete advice that you would give them? Well, that it's very important that young girls be interested in a science education, technology, research, and innovation, because this is an important factor for economic growth and reduction of poverty. It develops also very active skills for day-to-day life, critical thinking and analysis, and gives the young woman the chance to have autonomy, to be empowered, and to fulfill their dreams in society. Thank you very much, Ornella. We don't have enough time. There are some burning questions in the chat box that participants have been asking. So to summarize, I will bring some of them up here and see who would like to take them on, who would like to answer briefly. The question was asked by a participant to know why in Anglophone countries in Africa, we see that the number of girls and women is greater than in the Francophone countries. What explains that? And we've said this over and over again, that young women need to build their self-confidence. What are the resources that are being contributed to this? How can we further contribute these young women to advance in their studies and to carry out research? And all of these instruments, protocols, conventions that have been adopted, are not really implemented. What have we not done up until now that we need to do to not always be on these panels speaking about the need for women and girls to go into STEM, to advance in these areas? We're talking about STEM right now. In English, when we talk about science, technology, engineering, math, and art, how can we use the arts to allow women to better understand the sciences? Often we think that the arts and letters is where girls should be directed, oriented, but how can we make the link, the bridge between the two, the arts and the sciences? So these are a number of questions we're seeing in the chat box. We don't have enough time. We only have 5 minutes left. So can I give 1 minute to each of you to answer? Ornella, we can start with you. Yes, Uray, I mean. Yes, in terms of this question about integrating the arts, as the Anglophones say, you spoke to my heart. I've never understood why we took music, dance, and other arts out of the curriculum. You know, in the Middle Ages, music and dance was part of math studies. That's how it was categorized. So there are so many things that a music teacher can do hand in hand with a math teacher, what a sports teacher can do with a drawing teacher or an arts teacher. Projections, when we have to draw a muscle in anatomy class, you know, I see the the drawing teacher, the art teacher, working with the biology teacher. But unfortunately, we've categorized and siloed so many of these subjects. We've separated them from each other. They no longer speak to each other. The arts are very important, absolutely, for the sciences, and we have to make this link in the education system. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Uray. Félicité, do you have something to add to this? Yes, thank you very much. I would say that the gap we see in between the Anglophone countries and the Francophone countries in Africa in terms of STEM is fundamentally a cultural question. The Anglo-Saxon countries are very advanced in the areas of STEM. You know, even the word, we in French, we often tend to say STEM because STEAM in French is not really a term, an acronym that is well known, whereas STEM, when you say STEM in English, people immediately know what you're talking about. So there's much more emphasis placed in Anglophone countries on specializing on professional training, and so that's one difference I would highlight between Francophone countries and Anglophone countries. Dr. Nyanki, or any of the others, would you like to intervene? Yes, I would like to share an experience that the ministry carried out here in the area of science studies. There was a camp carried out for arts and science. The scientific endeavors were translated into artistic terms. And these were the best students, the most gifted students from all over Senegal who participated in this camp. We organized this, it was a vacation, a summer camp, vacation camp, and it was essentially arts-based, but all of the science and math concepts were translated into artistic terms. And it's happened 2 more times. It was a very promising event. We weren't able to do it again, but I just wanted to share that because it's a very promising approach. The students, through the arts, through art, were able to value the importance of science. Thank you very much, Madame Diouf. Dr. Nyanki. Yes, thank you very much. Madame, I would say that the Anglophone countries, you know, they started much earlier. They understood the importance of mentoring and tutoring and coaching from a young age. If I look at Ghana, for example, where the Association of Women Agronomic Engineers was very active very early on and took some very important steps. This is true in Uganda. And tutoring and mentoring has been very well developed in South Africa. We're talking about 15, 20 years ago, they were already doing these initiatives. It's arrived only recently in the Francophone countries. So the experienced women who have already achieved a career need to mentor the younger generations. This is very important. We have to coach those coming up. Those of us on this panel, we need to be at the avant-garde and to coach. We need to be the role models and the tutors and the mentors and the coaches. If we want this tendency to change, we need to be there and present. Yes, thank you. That's what we need to do. And in terms of funding, you know, the involvement of NGOs, civil society, what are the scholarships and grants we can offer young women to go into STEM? Thank you very much. Very well said. Dr. Drabo, a last word in a few seconds, if you can. Yes, thank you very much, Simon. I want to say that in the case of Burkina Faso, the involvement of women in STEM is very minimal right now, and I am one of the. I am really in a world of men, and I want us to continue to fight to have more women involved. And the financial aspect is very important. Having the desire, wanting to study science is one thing, but you have to be able to pay tuition fees. You have to be able to pay for your computer equipment and other hardware. And so I want to encourage young women to go into these areas to study, but we need to provide them with the means and the resources to go into STEM. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And finally, our young and brilliant scientist, do you have a final word to share? Madame Chanke, I agree with what many of my sisters have said here. We need to value and promote female African scientists in the schools. Young girls need to know that there are African women role models who are scientists, who are successful scientists and engineers and mathematicians and technologists, and that they be inspired by them through mentoring, tutoring, scholarships, coaching. This is how we can value those roles. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of the panelists for your brilliant participation. And I would like to hand things over to Madame Julie for the closing words. Madame Julie Crawley. Over to you. Thank you very much, Simon. Yes, the time has come to thank our presenters, the moderator, Simon, and I would like to offer my deepest gratitude to all of you for your inspiring contributions, enlightening words, which I hope will have been heard and digested and will have resonated with our public. Thank you once again to Madame Ornella Chank, who is a researcher at UNESCO, Dr. Madame Ouray Mamadou Anne from FAWE, Forum for African Women Educationalists, Madame Dewe Oumou Kairi Saldiouf, at FAWE in Senegal, Madame Félicité Djoukou, Executive Director of the Association des Acteurs de Développement, Dr. Irnyaki Nathalie Pera in Cameroon. Thank you very much for your presence. It was an honor to have you with us. We are very appreciative that you accepted our invitation. And thank you to our moderator, Simone Yanke Ouattara, who is the Senior Education Policy Officer at the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education in Africa. So thank you to all of our colleagues from IDRC who worked in the shadows, who worked behind the scenes to prepare this webinar. I'm thinking in particular Fatimata. And thank you to all of you in the audience who are listening in for your interest in this issue. I hope that this discussion has been pleasing to you, and I would like to underline that the recording will be available soon online on our website, but also through our social media, our Facebook and YouTube. Thank you to all of you, and I wish you a wonderful end to your day. Thank you. Bye now. Thank you. Bye.